Well, there isn't a single sport that my guest today, Anne-Marie Anderson, cannot do. Versatility, preparedness. This is the name of her game. You can watch her all over Pac-12 networks, ESPN, Big Ten Network. The list goes on. Known as a sportscaster, and obviously we're going to dive into that. But she's so much more. She's a mom of three, and we're going to get the whole picture here of our guest today. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, Tennis Channel, do some volleyball as well. Anne-Marie, I am so stoked to have you on. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
It's so nice to talk with you, Bryan. My pleasure.
Here's where we're going to start. I know you're big into pickleball. So how impressive would you say is your pickleball skill right now?
It's not impressive at all. Not even close. My competitiveness, top level, which really makes it hard because my ability does not meet my ego. So there we go.
Well, what about those competitive juices? Because obviously you played college volleyball, and obviously it's a very competitive industry that we are in. So if I'm watching you playing pickleball, what am I seeing from you from a competitive standpoint that will not to lose and to do whatever you can within you to not lose a game?
My strength is my mouth, right? I talk. So I am a big trash talker, and I will attempt to get in your head, and I think I'm pretty successful at that. I mean, competitiveness, right? As you said, it's a competitive field that we're in, and obviously being a college athlete is competitive. And I feel like that's something that's missing a little bit in the way that we raise our kids sometimes, especially young women. Got to teach them to compete, just to compete. Life is competing. If you're an accountant, it's competing for that job.
Well, you talked about your kids, and that was the perfect segue, because as someone like yourself who does a lot of play-by-play, if you were going to do play-by-play of what it's like on a school day in the morning, getting the kids ready for school, what is the play-by-play broadcast of having three kids and making sure they're all in the right places?
Okay, so play-by-play's primary job is time and situation, right? So I've got three kids who all need to be out the door really in 15-minute intervals. My high schooler, 7:45. My middle schooler, we leave at 8. My elementary school kid, because I did not do family planning very well, so 3 kids in preschool, is 8:15. So the biggest thing is time situation. Wake everybody up at a certain time. They come down for breakfast. Here's what it is. You don't like that? Sorry, we just got some time out because you're not getting breakfast. I don't have time for that. Bags by the front door as we go. Hair, shoes, computer, charger. Do you have it all? Okay. Bye, bye, bye.
So the routine is huge, and there
yeah.
comes a need for routine in the line of work as well. So generally speaking, not just from a broadcast standpoint, but also in life standpoint, how organized is Anne-Marie Anderson?
Crazy organized. My mother was always really organized, and I am hyper organized. And my ex-husband and I still parent very closely together, and we're good friends. And when my kids aren't, and he's not organized, and when the kids aren't on it, he just says, your mother is an expert at this. How do you organize your mother? It just is critical, especially, you know this, in play-by-play. If your game board's not organized, you don't know where to grab the information that you've researched. And I think my strength is always my prep.
What is the strength in what you've learned from having a son who is 1 year away from college, right? He's a senior in high school.
Yep.
The growth of him and what you've learned as a parent from watching him and where he is as your oldest.
Such a great question, Bryan, because my children are my best teachers. They teach you really painful lessons sometimes. And to look at, and I think about that child in particular, he's really quiet. We have very similar personalities, except he's super quiet. But when I look back, I was super shy in high school too. And I'm always trying to get him to self-advocate and speak up. Really easy kid to raise. But I think what he's taught me the most, because my second one is out of the box verbal with everybody. And my daughter, same thing, will talk to you till your ears bleed, which is a good thing. And so I think what I've learned the most from them is they are who they are. In spite of whatever you've done, parenting wise, I'm not going to take credit for who they've become. I might have to take a little blame for who they've become, at certain times, but it's really been a humbling experience being a parent, and it continues. It's a tough job.
The tackling of shyness, how did you break through that and what it took for you to get rid of that? Because in what you do, I cannot see a semblance, any a bit of DNA that you ever were shy?
When I was graduating college, or when I was going to college even, I was thinking, okay, what do I want to do? I can't add. I don't want to be a mathematician of any kind. Science, no. Retail, not really. Any business, I can't do it. And I remember saying, and I definitely don't want to do any public speaking. Now that's the way I make my living. I think the way I tackled it was, what's my other option?
Yeah.
If I'm going to survive in this business, and I knew I wanted to be a journalist, I'm going to have to work through it. And so for those first few years, it was kind of that clenching gut where I would go ask for a job or job interview. And it's a survival instinct. I always tell people, if you're thinking about entering television and if it doesn't work there, you have a plan B, then just go do plan B because it's easier. I never had a plan B. So the fact that I didn't have a plan B meant I needed to find my voice and speak up. And it took a long time.
How would you rate the way in which you're able to find your voice and speak up now, and how proud you are in yourself and how far you've come along in that department over these years?
I was just thinking this because I was just talking to somebody about an assignment earlier today. I was meeting with them about a possible role. And I thought, I'm just more confident now in what I can do in this business. And that took longer than I would have liked, despite, decades of working and accolades and such. And part of my goal for my own children and for the other people I see growing is to kind of know what you do well and embrace that. Some people say, like, work on your weaknesses. I think the opposite in a way when it comes to skill building. If you have something you're really good at, make it great, make it elite. But unless you can communicate that, you're going to fall by the wayside. And so there is a little fake it till you make it. But eventually own your space. You can do this.
Those words I'm hearing from you, and Anne-Marie Anderson is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. You're, as a teacher, not just as a teacher, as a mom, but also teaching others, empowering those in the business. Why do you feel like that is such a calling for you and that it gives you meaning in life?
Are you talking about the workshops I lead?
Yeah.
So I lead this virtual broadcasting workshop. I love it, Bryan. It's the course I wish I had when I started out. Nobody kind of tells you as a play-by-play what you need to do, or as an analyst, how to prepare, how it goes. And I like seeing people that I've worked with on the air and succeed. I just find great joy in it. And, as I tell them, here's how you prepare. It's a 3-session workshop. So in the first section, we go over how to prepare. And I have students from all over, from Japan, Hawaii, West Virginia, New York, wherever, Minnesota. And here's a game board. Here's how you prepare. Here's the steps you go through before you ever get on a call with a coach. And in the second session, we talk about play-by-play's role versus analyst's role. What are the top 2 mistakes that analysts make and how to fix them? For play-by-play, the number 1 complaint about play-by-play is how the 2 roles should dance together, what to do when things go wrong, because as you well know, things do go wrong. It's fun to see them prepared. And then the third session is a final private Zoom between me and the student where we talk about anything. If they want to send me some game tape, we can go over that. If we want to talk about career planning, way to attack things, we do that. And that's really fun because you get to hear people and you remember where you were in the business when you started.
When you started yourself, you were 21 years old. You wanted to be a journalist, and you probably had long-term plans at that age, but it took time for you to see those through. There had to be a level of, with the competition, with the talent, with this is the only option and I'm going to make it. But the level of patience that you had to have before you went on camera, because you were on as a producer beforehand. What were those years like? You knew ultimately what you wanted to do, but at the same time, you had to be patient.
I was too shy to ask for it. I was too shy to voice that I wanted to be in front of the camera. Now, those 10 years that I spent solely as a producer, because I did have some overlap after that where I was both, I learned so much. I mean, I covered 6 Olympic Games, and I felt like Forrest Gump, whether it was, the PGA Championship or the Super Bowl or NBA playoffs. I was there producing, working with some really top level talent at ESPN and watching the way they prepared. And eventually, I thought, I'm going to have to bite the bullet. And my first time on camera, I was so nervous. I was a football sideline reporter, and I remember my then husband asking me, like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Like, seriously, calm down. What's the worst that can happen? And I said, I could be so bad on camera that the people that I produce for will say, I'm not going to be coached by her. She's terrible. She can't do it. Even though I knew I was an excellent producer at that time. And he was like, wow, I never thought of that. You really, you really thought this through. So there's the patience to get there and to find your voice. But let me tell you, whenever anybody starts on air, you're not good. It never starts out good. I remember Mike Tirico and Robin Roberts. Those are the 2 people I remember at very young age having something special in them. And I think that's really rare. Maria Taylor, another one I worked with right at the beginning of her career. We were partners on a volleyball broadcast, and she was wow. But for the rest of us mere mortals, you're going to have to get the reps, and they're painful, and then watch it back and get better. It's the only way.
How about the idea, Marie, of being positively involved in self-talk through these processes? Because we assume, okay, we're going to get to the top within a certain amount of time, and we're potentially going to get there, but sometimes it takes different amounts of time to get there. But being kind through yourself or with yourself through that process, how do you have to really channel in that as you're watching your first tape and realizing, okay, I'm going to get better and I'm going to get better, and being kind to yourself?
Surround yourself with the right people, first of all, the people that are going to cheer you on. That's really important. 2, I'm a big kind to myself person. And it's funny that you asked that, because that is something I really think about a lot. And certainly with raising my children, I say, would you talk to your friend like that? Would you say that to me? The things that they're saying about themselves and to themselves. But for me, Bryan, to be honest, I'm a student still. And so I'm really interested. If you look through my career, I keep adding in sports. I keep changing positions, right? We talked about that I was a production assistant when I started, an assignment editor, an associate producer, a field producer, a feature producer, then a bureau producer, then football sidelines, then analyst, then play, and then started adding in sports. I like to keep changing things and adding in sports because I love the feeling of learning. And with the feeling of learning, you have to get really comfortable with failing and with rejection. And as soon as you get comfortable with that, then it's just exciting to watch yourself and go, oof, I can do better than that, and just be better next time.
What did it take, Anne-Marie, to get comfortable with rejection?
A lot of rejection.
Yeah.
A lot of rejection. And my attitude is, when somebody says no, I honestly, at this point, I'm telling the truth, it rolls off my back, and I think, not yet. I hear no, and I think not yet. There was when I moved back to LA in 2009, there was a network I wanted to work for, and I interviewed with them, and he didn't hire me, the person in charge. And I would see him at events when I was working other things, and I would say to him, "Is today the day? You're gonna hire me today?" And he would say, "No, no." And then I'd see him again. I'd be like, "Hey, how are you? Is today the day?" Because I was like, he can't fire me, right? He hasn't hired me. 2 years of me, every time I'd see him, be like, "Today?" And I swear to you, this is true. 2 years, I ran into him at an event, and he stopped me, and he's like, "Anne-Marie, today's the day." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, come on over, and I'll give you this," because, I'm not taking it personally. He didn't need me then, or I wasn't good enough then, or I'd improved in those 2 years, whatever the course was. But if you don't take it personally, you just get better and keep coming back.
Yes. And with you being more comfortable within yourself and taking that rejection, what I also noticed about you is that you sort of live a life of no regrets. You travel a lot. You're hearing stories about you scuba diving, in the Great Barrier Reef, and doing
Mhm.
all sorts of neat things. What spawned the adventurous side of Anne-Marie Anderson?
Okay, this is deep, Brian, just so you know. We'll get deep here for a minute. When I was brand new, not brand new at ESPN, I had been there a year, maybe a year and a half. I was, 22, 23. And a reporter that I worked with in Denver moved to Bristol to be an anchor there, got his dream job. He was 37 years old. And he came into work one day. He hadn't even been on air yet. And I said, hi, this and that. And he went behind the screen and to his desk. And a few minutes later, somebody came out yelling, does anybody know CPR? Does anybody know CPR? And I did. And I ran over there with some of my coworkers and performed CPR on him, and he did not survive. And he was 37 years old, had just moved to take his dream job, had been married 1 year. And that was it for him. And I remember in that moment saying, I will never wait again to do anything I want, because if you can be 37 years old and hit your dream job and have your life exactly where you want it's taken away, I'm not waiting for anything. And so to be honest with you, Brian, my first trip to Europe came a few months after that.
How have you seen life differently in general since that experience?
Just that, I mean, you hear it all the time, right? Nothing's promised. But does it really hurt me if somebody doesn't hire me for a job? No. It doesn't. If it's a job I really want, I mean, get better, figure it out, or make a different plan. It just really, it changed my life. I'm in touch with his family. I wrote about it maybe last year or the year before. And a lot of people saw that, and somehow it got to his brother, and his brother called me and, said, thank you so much for writing that. I kind of wondered what happened from inside ESPN at that time, because they saw him at the hospital, but like what occurred. And I think being able just to always keep in mind that the rest of this is just not that serious.
And how often do you think about that moment, even to this day?
I do. And that was, I think it was 1991. I think about it a lot. I mean, if I'm guessing, probably like once a week, maybe it pops into my head somewhere, or I tell the story to somebody. It just had a huge impact on my life, the way I look at things, what I think is a really serious issue, and what may seem like it to other people, but isn't. And that is why, you referenced my traveling, and I did. I went to Africa, and I've been to every continent except Antarctica, and I've, done some incredible things and hiked to Mount Everest Base Camp and all kinds of things. But this past summer, for the first time ever, I took the summer off of work completely. I did not do WNBA or anything else. And I took an individual trip with each of my kids overseas. And I think it's because I sold it to my ex-husband as a listening tour. So, can you help me out? And he said, yeah, and it ended up being a listening tour. I think it's because my oldest son was leaving, and I knew that maybe I wouldn't get as much from him this summer as I did last. And so it was fascinating to me to take them all out of the country without phones. And, my oldest one wanted to talk about politics. My middle one wanted to talk about anxiety. My youngest child wanted to talk about body image. And just to have that opportunity to get to know them on a different level was amazing. And to share adventures. Everybody had to learn a new skill. That was my requirement. Everybody had to learn a new skill to go over. So the boys both picked scuba diving. So that's, we scuba dived with sharks in the Bahamas, which was amazing. And then my middle child and I went to Belize and just dove twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, every day. It was a brand new skill for him. And he's somebody who's super high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety. And for him, in the water was great. He's a water polo player. Yeah. And so for him to maintain his breathing was a really valuable skill for him. And then my daughter, who was 9 at the time, studied Spanish, Duolingo every day. And we went hiking in Spain, where we hiked end to end. And we get there, and the rule was, you got to speak Spanish. And by the end of the trip, she was like, buenos días, quisiera un jugo de naranja, por favor. And she was ordering her breakfast in Spanish. And it was cool. I'm trying to figure it out for this summer. I said that to my daughter this morning. I'm like, where do we want to go? Like, maybe I can swing it a second year. I don't know.
Well, there is one continent that you haven't been to yet.
And that's too cold. Too cold. I went down to the icebergs at the end of South America's southernmost point. It was freezing.
But the idea of you taking those separate trips with your kids and listening and just being there, what did that do to strengthen your relationship? Not saying anything, but just listening to what's going on in their own heads and to be there for them.
It made me look at them a little bit differently and deeper, right? Because I think in parenting, especially, we're hammering people, do you have all your essays turned in? Is everything okay there? How are you getting along at school? What's this note I got from the teacher? Hurry, hurry, hurry. You need to get to the orthodontist. And that. So for me to have no agenda and sit with them at dinner with no phones, which is always really good, and to sit with them and just talk. I mean, I was really surprised when my son wanted to start talking about politics. And then I was able to say, well, these are my views. They're a little different from Dad's. This is what Dad thinks. This is why I think the way I think. What do you think?
Yeah.
And he had strong opinions that I was completely not aware of. And I was so happy to know that, there were opinions in there, the teenage boy, because he's voting next year. And so I thought that was really special. And to hear my daughter coming out of fourth grade talking about, is my body okay? There are people that are smaller than me. Am I strong enough? Just really at that age, I didn't know that was going on for her. It was important.
You give all of your kids that validation that is priceless in those conversations that you had during that trip and that you continue to have with them. Anne-Marie, how much do you think of how you're thought of?
Not at all. Do you mean by people in the business or?
Anywhere, whether the idea
my friends, it matters a lot to me how my close friends think of me. I would say my strength as a friend is that I'm a vault. I don't share with anybody else your personal business ever. So that matters to me. It matters what my children think of me. It matters what my ex-husband thinks of me as a mother to them. And, am I doing right by him in terms of our co-parenting? We're very proud of the way that we co-parent. But if you're talking about the people on Twitter, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't have an opinion. And if you're talking about the people who I work with or who I hire, that's my responsibility to do such a great job, be a great teammate, be easy to work with, be a good partner who elevates those people around me. If I do that job well, then they're going to feel good about me. And if I'm failing in some way, that's on me. That's not on them. If they're not loving what I do, I need to change what I do in order to make sure that I'm the real teammate that everybody deserves to have in the workplace.
One of your teammates has been Tammy Blackburn, and her incredible story. What have you gleaned from a source of inspiration from her and getting to work with her?
She's tough, man. Tammy is really tough. Super driven and ambitious. And we first worked together probably back in, 2003 or something like that. And Tammy is a grinder, as we all are in this business. But when she was hit with breast cancer, she wanted to work still as much as she could. And that's because it gave her some relief, a sense of normalcy. And I have watched over these last 5 years her suffer blow after blow after blow after setback. But Tammy approaches work with such a positive attitude all the time. All the time. She approaches with her best effort. She's another one that's great at prep. She's never going to slack on the prep, no matter what, even given her diagnosis. So she's an inspiration for sure.
She's an inspiration. Anne-Marie, you are an inspiration. And I think you have a few more that are joining the Anne-Marie Anderson fan club after watching this conversation. Anne-Marie, this has been such an honor and a pleasure to have you on, and really excited to see the growth of your virtual sports broadcasting workshop as well as you do that. But I'm Bryan Fenley, and Anne-Marie, thank you so much with your talks about such challenging topics, but with such depth and And just it was a invaluable conversation.
Thank you for having me, Bryan. We went deep there for a little bit, didn't we?